budget cuts to higher education are coming. We know state universities will be squeezed another 15 to 22%. The House and Senate will quibble over the fine print, and a deal should be done within the next month or so. How will it impact students, institutions of higher learning, and the future of our state? We'll discuss with President of Grand Valley State University on West Michigan Week. And thank you for joining us on West Michigan Week. On our panel, Carol Valade from the Grand Rapids Business Journal, and our guest, the president of Grand Valley State University, Dr. Thomas Haas.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. So much to talk about. You make your travels to Lansing. You're a frequent traveler with these gas prices. I don't know how the car's holding up. But I want to start off with a presentation that you had. You went before the Senate Subcommittee on Education there, and you had this to say. 25 years ago, taxpayers paid 67% of Grand Valley's operating expenses. If the proposed executive budget is adopted, the taxpayer share of Grand Valley's operating budget will be 17%. Mr. Chairman, you've asked us to use privatization to save money, and we are. But when it comes to the operating appropriation, the state of Michigan has largely privatized Grand Valley State University. It's interesting because you see this cost shift. Mm-hmm. In essence, it's great for taxpayers. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is for those who are sending their children to institutions of higher ed learning, mm-hmm. they're the ones that are getting caught here footing the bill. And
it is a tax shift. And what has happened as the investment in the state has gone down, the amount of tuition goes up. But we have seen that now through these last 25 years. I also asked those in the legislature, where would you be without your degree? Because many of them have had a public higher educational opportunity. But the subsidy has changed, and those facts and figures are real. And there is now, in essence, a private-like model, business model, that I have to operate Grand Valley State University upon.
In your mind, is this taking away public colleges and universities? Is this a swift move in your mind to private universities universally in the state of Michigan?
Well, I think we will be state located. We still have a public purpose, and I really am very passionate about the public purpose. We are producing a public good with a degree, but also we do have a public purpose for the state and the region in which the universities are located. But the model has changed. It's been consistent over these past years, these past decades, that the shift in obligation has changed. And in fact, when I looked at the new dashboard that came out mm-hmm. for higher education, there was nothing in there that demonstrated to me that the state has a responsibility or an obligation for supporting the public good.
Do you see that message repeated in other speeches and in terms of the way the legislature is looking at the funding quotient?
It has, and by de facto, with its cuts through the years, it has shifted with a consistent message that the consumer, mm-hmm. so to speak, the students and their families, are to take more and more of the obligation. And I think that's very unfortunate. We also see it in capital outlay. Less and less support for public higher institution. We have to now go out on the market for bonding, or in our regard at Grand Valley, with a wonderful private-public partnership that helps nurture us in the learning environment that has been produced because of that partnership.
This 15 to 22%. Let's just get the confusion out of the way here. What does that mean? Is it if you perform at such and such a level, the state cuts the university a break? It will only cut you by 15% as opposed to 22%.
Well, it wasn't really a performance measure, actually, interestingly enough. I wish it was. At Grand Valley, we have our accountability report that demonstrates our outcomes and performance measures. But it was really a combination of price controls because what the proposal was, and it was clear that it was a 22% budget cut. If you then had price controls with your tuition, keeping it below 7%, then you would be rewarded with a cut of only 15%.
And this is extended too. It's not new. It's been going on in terms of tuition caps for several years.
Well, what we do at Grand Valley, there's not a tuition cap per se. I look at the market, and I want to keep my price points where they are, which is below the average. Even with the state appropriation that we receive, which is last in the state. And in fact, if I look at Grand Valley's state appropriation per student nationally, of the 611 schools, public higher educational institutions, we're almost last in that measure too. We're 33rd from the bottom of this measure. So I think that what we have seen here with this cut is additional erosion of the investment made, and that I could see this coming. In the last 3 years, we had a maintenance of effort that was through the stimulus dollars, and that we could see this coming. We made the adjustments with our cost structures, keeping our cost structures at about 8% below the average administrative cost in the rest of the state. So I had to balance this all out with a new model. This model is to be more private-like.
I'm thinking about this model. I'm also thinking about the work, most recently CEOs for Cities, and the value of a college-educated community. They're running around the country now doing promise grants to those urban areas that can raise the number of their population with a college education, and thereby bump the average earnings per household. All economic good. So I'm trying to understand how this makes any sense. If you're committed to turning the economy in the state of Michigan, why then pull back so hard on education?
Well, I asked the same questions.
And what do you hear?
And the focus right now.
What's the hidden agenda, I guess?
I think the focus is not hidden, that there is a relationship between business policy and higher educational policy. In the short term, the business policy is trumping the higher educational policy in order to operate within our means. And then to see the impacts of that disinvestment. I'm just hopeful that we haven't gone off the tipping point on telling our young people that the state's really not interested in you as an individual and help revitalize this state. So I'm going to take this perspective. I'm going to seek out ways that I can keep the talent here. That Carol Coletta and the CEOs for Cities is right on. And in fact, at Grand Valley, we have seen in the last 10 years, we've almost doubled the number of graduates from Grand Valley State University. We had 10 years ago about 2,200, and after last Saturday, we had almost 5,100 grads. And now those grads, because of the focus that I think Don Lubbers had, Mark Murray, and now Tom Haas, in creating intentional relationships with the business community, with internships and the like, we're seeing return. So I'm going to operate in that regard. I'm really taking a look at the state appropriation more like a grant. And I'm operating now the university more private-like, with the private-public partnership that will continue to nurture this university and return the investment then on the private part of this, because we see a significant number of people staying right here in West Michigan now in jobs and going to grad school. I was going to ask about
that. There's a pretty high retention rate in terms of keeping graduates in the West Michigan community and in Michigan.
It really is.
70%.
It's one of the great stories about Grand Valley over these past years, especially the last 5, when we see now, just last year, for instance, we had 58% of those working in Michigan were working in West Michigan. Now, this current study through Upjohn with our economic impact showed that we are now at 76% those working in West Michigan, and 2/3 of them in the graduates' areas of study. That includes business and health sciences, engineering, and some of the not-for-profits.
Explain to the viewers the appropriation that the university does get compared to the other universities in this state.
Right. Right now, when and if this goes through with the cuts that we have at 15%, I'm going to maintain the tuition below the 7% for access and affordability. I must. We are also going to add in financial aid for those that, especially first-generation students that need that to attend Grand Valley. The rest of the state, I'll give you real numbers instead of percentages.
And then a comparison of graduation rates.
Sure. When I look at the real numbers, we'll have about, at the end of this time, about $2,300 per student. The average will be around $5,000 per student. That's the average in terms of real numbers, not just percentages, but real numbers. And that's a pretty significant difference. So I have to operate that way. And then we look at the outcome, as I mentioned, the numbers of students that are staying right here in jobs or in Michigan. And our graduation rates are now third and four-year rate, and we're fourth in and improving year over year, record high in terms of graduation rates at the 6-year, which is the national model for measurement. So we are focused in on bringing in great students, diverse students, and we are keeping them here, and they're persisting and graduating.
You've had a successful model by all comparisons across the state and the lowest amount of funding. And so I'm wondering, in a soft recovery such as we're experiencing now, whether you think you can maintain that level of education to that number of students, young students. Do you think that this will impact the number who might even enroll down the road?
Well, I think what drives decisions is a number of different factors when you come to a student and their families, and also the adult learner too is returning, and the veterans who are coming back to school. They're looking at the price points, and they're looking at packaging in terms of financial aid, and and we discount, of course, as schools do. And then what we look at is how we can, in fact, continue to provide the quality and relevance, and then, therefore, attract good students and retain them right here.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more on the cuts to higher education with Dr. Thomas Haas of Grand Valley State University in 1 minute. And we're back with more West Michigan Week and our guest, Dr. Thomas Haas, president of Grand Valley State University. And we're talking about higher education. And during our minute off camera, we were talking about enrollment. And where do you see the future heading? Are we going to see a decline? And what are some of the issues facing enrollment right now?
The demographics had already seen a decline in the number of 18-year-olds. That was predictable, and so we're seeing that.
Birth rates.
Birth rates and the like. But we're also seeing an uptick in the number of returning adults. And we're also seeing some of the transfer opportunities from a community college into Grand Valley State University. So our enrollment projections for next year looks as though we'll be stable. In terms of our attraction for good quality students. In fact, our application rates have been up in the 20% range year over year. Our orientation numbers are up as well, both in terms of the freshman numbers and the transfer numbers. So we're looking at that market as well as the veterans, and the graduate school numbers are also up. So
long term, you expect it to be relatively unchanged.
I'm going to look at stability because I'm adjusting. One of the focus on enrollment management is making sure that you adjust to the markets that you have. So we know that there's going to be a depression with the numbers of freshmen, so we have to understand that, but we're also looking at the other market dimensions that we have too.
I just want to jump in here. When you were testifying back in March, you had talked about duplication
Yes.
and community colleges, and the idea that there's a proposal that community colleges could offer a 4-year degree, which flies in the face of this idea that we don't need any more universities. Is that something that's still out there and that is a possibility?
It's still out there, and I don't think it's a possibility because I don't think the state can embrace that model. I think that would be very poor public policy to have community colleges look ahead to being more than what their mission is.
Well,
And
isn't
I
that a
embrace-
costly retooling as well?
Yes, it would be. And the short-term argument from community college says it's going to be less expensive. But if you look at that over just a short period of time, it's much more expensive for them to start tooling up. And so when I was chairing the President's Council, I told the state and Lansing, the legislative leaders that would listen, and they did, saying that wherever there's the need, well, you have 15 public universities who will in fact go to wherever that need is. So if there's cement needs in Alpena, Ferris State will go on over and do that. If there's needs up in Traverse City, let's do that. But we committed ourselves to go where the market is to provide that, and then do it with the community college. Let's look at collaboration, not duplication.
Well, collaboration in that word brings to mind the new Seidman School being developed downtown. The importance Grand Valley and the business community placed on having a student population, a creative class in the downtown urban area on a regular basis were commitments and prized economic development opportunities. There are some who say, however, that maybe the university is worried too much about building out new programs, new buildings, and would those cutting those kinds of things assist in the face of the state funding cuts? Does it make a difference?
These investments are critical because I go by the adage, today's decisions are tomorrow's reality. We're creating an environment, we're creating the programmatic needs. We're at a very distinctive MBA program full-time. We're looking at entrepreneurial studies, which is part of the DNA of West Michigan. And if you look at this, that building is an enabler. It's an enabler to create and shape the talent that's needed in Grand Rapids and West Michigan. And I'm thrilled that through the public-private partnerships that we have to establish this, it's not the building, it's what the outcomes are given what we need. And the market is there. We've done a great business plan to underscore what the long-term. So we have short-term jobs in creating the center, and we have the long-term jobs to produce the talent.
Upjohn University or Upjohn Institute has put sort of numbers and to that and looked at it as an economic development tool. You've seen the latest report issued just recently, and I wonder if you could speak to that.
Actually, when you look at the responsibilities of a public institution, again, I'm going to really focus our attention. We are still a public institution, but it's two sides of a coin. Our responsibility is talent development and retaining that, and then it's economic development as well. And year over year, it's pretty remarkable, given what we've seen in the last 12 months. Our economic impact went up $40 million now in the Tri-County region to $680 million. We're a business in great regard, and that does not include the impact that our graduates have on this region, and I could blow that number up too. But I do think that that's pretty remarkable. And at the same time, we're seeing our development efforts increase year over year too. Meaning those in the donor community helping nurture Grand Valley State University, which is also adding a magnification to the impact that we have in economic development.
Is there a deep enough well in terms of that public and private partnership?
Well, at Grand Valley, what we're doing is we're going to celebrate the end of a comprehensive campaign in June. It's going to be a very successful announcement. We started off with...
You don't want to tell us now?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of indication. We started off with $50 million for 50 years of service, and we hit that last June, a year ahead of schedule.
Wow.
And then we added in the Seidman Center for another $25 million, and we're on track. and we'll make the announcement. But I do think that that well you talked about is not limitless. And in fact, what we need to do, again, to be more private-like, and we're young, we're only 50 years old, we're going to broaden the base with the impact of our alumni.
And you, just to put this to bed, you really cannot become a private institution. To become a private, you'd have to sell all the buildings back to the state, and you'd have to have your own endowment in place. It becomes it's tricky.
What I mean by that is we have to operate differently.
Right.
You know, and that's why I say that really Grand Valley State University will be Michigan's entrepreneurial university. We'll be known for our innovations. We'll be known for our curriculum. We'll be known for our value. We'll be known for rigor and relevance and a good return on investment. So it's the business model that we've been forced to change from where we were state supported to state located, now to be more private-like in the state. And as I mentioned, I'm going to take my resources from the state, which I appreciate every dollar I get, but I'm going to use that more like a grant in aid, and then ensure that I can operate as efficiently and cost effectively as I can. And we have great stats to show that, and at the end of the day, deliver on the promises that we have as a Grand Valley State University.
I just wanted to be clear for the viewers that Grand Valley is not going to become
Right.
a private institution
Well, it
tomorrow.
would be like trying to create a giraffe from an elephant or something, but in terms of structure. I'm going to make the point of Gentex in nearby Zeeland and their year-long search for high-tech and experienced engineers. This is an industry that owns many, many patents and is very successful in all kinds of high-tech tools, including light darkening mirrors and that sort of thing on automobiles. They certainly make no bones that if they are unable to fill those positions and get people to Zeeland, they'll have to move to where that talent pool exists. That's devastating type of news for Michigan in a recovery. How can you answer their need? I walk past the engineering school every day, but it's not necessarily bringing experience with it unless you consider the internship program.
And that's what I need to consider. What can we control, and what we control is the relationship we have with the business community. And I think that's one of the strengths of Grand Valley State University has been the interactions that we have with the local industries, both large and small. And what we are wanting to do, in fact, last year we had 6,800 internships and co-op programs with, and that's a record high for us. This is very intentional because I hear time and again from students saying, well, I got a job now, that's where I did my internship. So, especially in the engineering where you got the co-op program too. So what we're hoping to do is they're going to get the experience that they need, and then the industries that are here are going to be able to pick and choose the best and the brightest from those that have devoted themselves some time in their experiences.
Aren't you also experiencing some pretty big increases in summer enrollments, that type of thing?
Our summer enrollments, in fact...
And does that graduate these students a little more quickly?
Absolutely. Since we kicked off this, what they call the grand finish, if you have 90 credits by the time you're a junior, I'm going to give you $1,000 to finish your education. It might save a student another semester, so they're going to save those dollars too. I want to make sure that those students that want to take advantage of this have the opportunity, and there's the financial reward too. So I get the additional capacity because of the numbers of students who we want to serve, and it's a win for everyone. You get an acceleration towards a degree, and those students then are going to look around and say, I'm going to stay right here in West Michigan.
What do you tell parents these days? I mean, my daughter's a year and a half old. What do you tell parents today? Where are we heading when it comes to the price of sending your child off to school?
Well, I'm hopeful that here in Michigan that I'm on my bottom in terms of the grant that I get from the state in terms of the appropriation. We need to look at ways to accelerate the degree completion. We have to look at new models that includes technology. We want to make sure that at the end of the day, though, we're producing a well-rounded individual. Liberal arts education at Grand Valley is alive and well. And in fact, if you look at entrepreneurship and innovation, it's founded on a liberal arts construct. So I think that what you tell parents, that you want to create the opportunities for your students.
All right. We'll end it there. Kara Valet, Grand Rapids Business Journal, and our guest, Dr. Thomas Haas, President, Grand Valley State University. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Carol.
And thank you for joining us this week. We'll see you next week on West Michigan Week. Thank you.